Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the daily Hindu News Analysis. So as we begin the discussion, UPSC Prelims would have also started parallelly today. So at 7 p.m. we shall be covering today's question paper. We shall discuss all the questions, give you the answer keys. So don't forget to attend this session live at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. And also we have a price drop campaign going on till the 30th of May, where you stand to get around 60% scholarship on our courses. Those interested, register by using the link provided in the pinned comment below. With this, let's begin the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by first looking at the topics we are going to cover today. I have chosen 9 important articles. We shall first focus on the 4 big articles that are more relevant for our mains, and then cover the smaller articles related to prelims. So just stay with me for the next 60 to 70 minutes. We'll try to cover all these topics comprehensively in detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys have benefited from this initiative, just let us know by sharing your comments, pressing that like button, and by subscribing to our channel. So let's get started with the first article from page number 10. This article deals with National Family Health Survey, or NFHS. It happens to be an important topic under health and governance, especially for GS paper 2, and this topic could be relevant for prelims and as well as for your mains. So let's talk about NFHS first. Let's go beyond the article, cover all the details regarding National Family Health Survey, and then talk about the focus point of the article. The NFHS is a premier survey conducted in India, which is led by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This is a large-scale exercise, a country-wide exercise, where sample households are chosen to provide a representative sample. And through a multi-round survey, key healthcare indicators and parameters are captured in this survey. This essentially becomes an important tool for policymakers to understand the health profile of the country, to understand the prevalent health conditions, the diseases, the challenges in the healthcare sector, based on which healthcare schemes can be planned and implemented. And it also helps in understanding the effectiveness of ongoing healthcare programs. So this survey is extremely crucial as far as healthcare in India is concerned. And the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare conducts this large-scale multi-round survey called National Family Health Survey. The actual ground exercise of carrying out the field visits, collecting the data through questionnaires, this is designated by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to the International Institute for Population Sciences based out of Mumbai. This institute provides the technical assistance needed by working with other ground level organizations that carry out the field work. Since it's a survey, it involves a lot of field work where the volunteers go out and meet the correspondents, give them a questionnaire, ask them these questions, and try to capture that data, which helps in bringing up the National Family Health Survey. The main objective here is to ensure that through each round of survey, we are bringing out high quality data on healthcare on India's population. It becomes an important policy making tool for the government, for the planners, the legislators, the leaders, etc. And thus it plays a very important role in India's governance and healthcare sector. Let's see what kind of data is captured in this survey. Under the National Family Health Survey, a lot of parameters have been identified. For example, the general characteristics of the Indian population, the general genetic and visual characteristics, the feature of Indian population is captured, along with important data on fertility and family planning, the number of kids that on an average are being had by couples, other important family planning data, whether couples are using contraceptives, etc. Next, important data related to infant and child mortality, because these are very important healthcare indicators. Child mortality rates, maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates. These are vital indicators of healthcare in a country. So all such maternal and child health data is also captured. It also focuses on vaccine coverage, nutrition and status of anemia in the country, morbidity and healthcare available for morbid conditions, and even few non-communicable diseases and lifestyle conditions like diabetes, hypertension, prevalence of cancer in the country, right? So all such data along with few essential parameters are identified by the Health and Family Welfare Ministry, which is captured through this important survey. The funding for this nationwide exercise has come from different organizations. There have been different rounds of NFHS which has happened. Till now, we have had National Family Health Survey 5, which was conducted last in 2019-2020. It was revised in 2022. This was the last National Family Health Survey that happened in our country. The first exercise started back in 1990s, in 92-93. That was when the first National Family Health Survey was introduced. This was followed up by the second round of National Family Health Survey back in 98-99, covering almost 26 states in India. Then in the third round of survey, which started in 2005-2006, many global institutions and NGOs were involved in funding the initiative along with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The fourth round, starting from 2014-2015, covered 29 states and all the union territories based on the 2011 census data. All right, and the latest survey, the NFHS 5, which started in 2019-20, has captured COVID-related data as well, and last year it has been updated by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So these different rounds of National Family Health Survey, they are funded, they are sponsored by various institutions. There are global institutions like UNICEF and UN Population Fund which have been involved. You have global NGOs like USAID, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is a philanthropic initiative of Bill Gates. USAID is a US government aid agency working as a not-for-profit organization providing aid across countries, across developing and underdeveloped countries. So such global institutions, UN organizations, then NGOs and even philanthropic institutions have been involved in funding the initiative along with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This is another important fact for your prelims. In the latest survey that was completed, that is National Family Health Survey 5, the key benchmarks in healthcare sector were identified. In fact, that is what every health survey does. By picking out this vital data, by tracking these important indicators and parameters, it is setting the benchmark for healthcare sector planning and policy implementation. It provides essentially evidence, clear-cut ground level evidence is brought out by such surveys regarding the effectiveness of ongoing healthcare programs. It helps us understand how effectively are we implementing the healthcare goals and targets, and are we on track to achieve those targets. It helps in drafting policies like the National Health Policy and in drafting various healthcare schemes which the government rolls out. It could be Ayushman Bharat, it could be the Janani Suraksha Yojana, the variety of healthcare schemes that we have, right, which are rolled out by the government. Their planning and implementation depends on such data which is brought out by the National Family Health Survey. It helps in identifying the need for new programs, new interventions. If let's say there is a new disease which is prevailing in the country or a new healthcare condition which has come up, which attracts the attention of the government and the policy makers, that data will help us in coming out with new programs and policies. It also helps us track our progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Under the SDG goals, we have a commitment to achieve a certain healthcare status, to reduce infant mortality, maternal mortality, to tackle infectious and as well as non-communicable diseases, right? And even with regard to nutrition and healthcare, there are several targets laid out under Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. So India's progress towards achieving these goals can also be effectively tracked through such periodic health surveys. So that is the primary objective of these surveys. And in the 5th edition, several new parameters were added such as preschool education, disability, access to toilet facility, especially for school-going children, registration of death, bathing and hygiene practices during menstruation in girls, and methods and reasons for abortion. Such new healthcare parameters and indicators can also be added in the upcoming surveys. Now, the reason why the topic is in news is because the 6th edition of the survey is all set to be launched from July 2023. In just a few months, the latest edition of NFHS will be launched by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. But according to the article in the Hindu, a concern has come up amongst rights activists, human rights activists and disability rights activists that apparently questions related to disability are being dropped in this year's questionnaire. Credible sources have informed the media that the government is planning to remove these questions on disability. It was previously capturing data on disability in India, right? The physically disabled. They constitute a significant percentage of India's population and they represent a vulnerable community. In India, all kinds of disability can be seen. Visual or hearing impairment or physical impairment through legs and hands immobility, right? So there are a variety of immobilities and impairments that disabled people suffer from, and this makes them socio-economically highly vulnerable. Those who suffer from these conditions, these disability conditions, it affects their livelihood, it affects their movement, it affects their access to government services, right? So considering the importance of dealing with disability and providing dedicated policies and benefits to disabled people, the healthcare survey was very, very important. Previously, it had several questions related to disability in the country. But now, according to sources, the ministry is planning to drop these questions altogether. And that is what has raised concerns for disability rights activists. As India has one of the highest loads of disabled people in the country, these concerns have been brought up by various NGOs and rights activists. They are demanding an immediate correction here and they want these questions to be included back. The government still has not clarified this, but according to these credible sources, the questions related to disability are going to be dropped in this year's survey. The activists who are critical of this policy of the government, they have highlighted India's obligations to protect the disabled community. Not only we have legal constitutional commitments to look after all the vulnerable, weaker sections, but we also have international commitments. For example, India has signed and ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and as well as the SDG goals of the UN. Under these conventions and UN targets, India has a global international obligation to protect the community with disabilities. Right? Even in our national health policy, even if you look at our legal constitutional framework, the government is obliged to work towards enabling the disabled community. So by citing these grounds, activists are demanding that the government should make a course correction and in the upcoming National Family Health Survey, questions related to disability should be included back according to these activists. So that is what you need to understand from this important article in today's The Hindu newspaper. Now we move on to the next topic from page number 12 related to science and technology. The topic deals with iron fortification. It deals with iron deficiency and the need for iron fortification and the risks associated with iron fortification. The topic is very important for your prelims and mains, so let's take a look at it. See, iron happens to be one of the most essential minerals required for various human physiological and bodily functions. It's one of the essential minerals that is required in micro quantities on a regular day-to-day basis in your diet, so that our regular bodily functions, physiological functions can go on normally. But several people suffer from iron deficiency, especially children, women, young girls. They generally tend to suffer from iron deficiency, which directly affects the formation of hemoglobin, leading to anemic condition. Anemia in itself is a major health disorder that is associated with many other health conditions, and it has a serious impact on the health profile of the country. So to tackle anemia, which is primarily induced through iron deficiency, governments around the world, they generally promote iron fortification through food. Through various staple food items, iron is added into your diet through fortification. For example, iodine is added into our daily table salt that we consume. Since iodine is absolutely essential for our thyroid gland and pituitary functions, in our regular salt that we consume, the table salt, the cooking salt, right? All the companies have been mandated by the government to fortify salt with iodine. So the salt that we consume off the shelf, it is iodized salt. So through this, you are meeting your daily dietary requirement for iodine. Similarly, various other micronutrients like iron, folic acid, etc., and even essential vitamins can be added in our regular food items. So since many years, the government has been promoting fortification of food with iron to deal with anemia, to deal with iron deficiency in the country, especially to promote the health of women and young girls who suffer from anemic conditions. Fortification of iron has been promoted on a mass scale. Essential staple items like wheat, rice, even salt, a lot of them are fortified with iron, where at least 2/3 of the daily requirement of iron, that is around 10 milligrams per day, is added into the food item. This fulfills 2/3 of the daily dietary requirement of adult women, because see, women have a higher requirement for iron. Alright, I'll explain why. We'll come to that. But please understand this from a prelims point of view. Women have a higher iron requirement in their daily diet as compared to men. Alright? So, through fortification, at least 2/3 of the daily requirement of iron for women, adult women, is met through fortified food. This, however, provides the entire daily requirement for men, because men have a slightly lower requirement of iron as compared to women. So addition of 10 milligrams per day of iron through your food items, through fortification, fulfills the entire daily requirement of adult men and fulfills 2/3 of the requirement for adult women. Now the problem here is, what happens when there is excessive consumption of iron? Since several food products are being fortified, with a push being given by the government itself, if there is an imbalance in our diet, if you are consuming various food products which are fortified with iron, you might end up consuming much more than your daily requirement. Instead of consuming 10 milligrams per day, you might end up consuming 20-25 milligrams per day on a regular, consistent basis. In case of such excessive consumption, what happens? There is a recent study which has come out, that is what the article is focusing upon. It clearly points out that excessive iron fortification could be extremely dangerous for human beings, both for men and women, especially for men. Excessive iron fortification, excess iron consumption can become very dangerous, leading to serious healthcare conditions. So let's understand more about this. According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, the tolerable upper limit of iron has been identified at 40 milligrams per day. This is the maximum limit, beyond which the consequences will be irreversible and extremely hazardous. See, generally daily requirement is 10 milligrams per day for adult men. Alright? But the maximum that your body can sustain is up to 40 milligrams per day. This is the tolerable upper limit. But recent studies have shown that iron consumption has crossed the tolerable upper limit. This is due to iron fortification on a massive scale. Since a lot of staple food items are being fortified with iron, generally the population is consuming much more iron than is needed. They are even crossing the tolerable upper limit. In many cases, people have consumed iron on a daily basis at a rate of 50 to 60 milligrams per day, which is many times higher than the tolerable upper limit. This leads to very, very serious conditions, especially in patients who suffer from iron overload states like thalassemia. Thalassemia, which is a blood-related disorder where patients are already suffering from iron overload stress. It further increases the complications for them. Other than that, men especially are more vulnerable. Even women will suffer adverse consequences when there is excessive consumption of iron. See, when it comes to iron consumption, absorption and excretion in the human body, when you consume iron in large quantities, the absorption happens at a very slow, steady rate. Even the excretion, the removal of iron from your body, happens at a very steady and slow pace. If you look at women, there is a faster pace of excretion where iron is removed from the body more quickly than men because of menstrual bleeding. As women lose blood during menstruation, it helps in removing excess iron, whereas men are at higher risk here as the body retains the iron for a much longer time. Even in children, unique conditions have been noted where iron that has been consumed and absorbed remains in the body for prolonged periods of time. It's not excreted, it's not removed on time. This accumulation of iron in the body, especially in men as well as in children and women, is linked with many serious disorders and conditions, including diabetes. It is known to increase oxidation, especially fat oxidation, leading to abnormal fat oxidation in the body, thus increasing the risk of diabetes as well. It is directly linked with excessive serum triglyceridemia that causes accumulation of triglycerides in muscle and liver tissue. All right, it's linked with more occurrence of diabetes and with accumulation of triglycerides in your muscle and liver tissue, which can damage the muscle and liver tissue. The latest study has linked iron overconsumption with liver fibrosis and liver cirrhosis, which leads to the scratches to develop on your liver that affects liver function. Is that clear? It leads to liver fibrosis and cirrhosis, which is a very dangerous, could even become fatal. And it also is associated with affecting the gastrointestinal functions, especially in children. Excessive iron accumulation in our gastrointestinal tract affects the microbes that are present in the gut lining. In the intestines, the healthy microbes which are present, the microbiome, right? This gets compromised, thus affecting your ability to digest food, leading to serious conditions. It could affect the way in which food is digested and processed, the absorption of other essential nutrients. It leads to severe gastric related disorders, even diarrhea, and it further causes many more complications as a result of this. So that is the reason why healthcare experts, they are urging governments and policy makers and even the food industry to tone down on iron fortification. Since this data has clearly come out that excessive consumption leads to accumulation of iron, which is dangerous, and it's linked with such dangerous disorders, it's important to stop fortification on a mass scale. Maybe the entire population does not need iron, right? For example, many of them would be meeting their daily iron requirement through their regular diet. So for them, if fortified food is being given and if they're consuming iron in addition to their regular diet, it's obviously going to lead to accumulation of iron. So that is why healthcare experts are urging caution, and they are urging a more individual approach, a more individualistic approach to administer iron only to those who are suffering from the deficiency. Maybe the government should think of a targeted program focused on women, young girls, children, and certain men who might be suffering from iron deficiency. Maybe through a pill which is prescribed, right? But fortification through regular food items can become dangerous as it's being consumed by everyone, even those who are not deficient with iron. So this causes these dangerous healthcare disorders. That is exactly what the latest research paper has brought out. All right. Now this topic is very important for your prelims. You can expect a basic question here, maybe even a mains question, a 10-mark question talking about iron deficiency and the advantages and disadvantages of iron fortification. So please be prepared for such a possible question. Next, topic number 3 from page number 12 and 13. We have 2 articles related to Project Cheetah, and it helps us understand and evaluate Project Cheetah, which is an ambitious program being implemented by the Modi government. It gives us an opportunity to understand the challenges being faced in the implementation of Project Cheetah. So let's take a look at these articles and understand the challenges being faced by Project Cheetah. As you know, Project Cheetah is a very ambitious program of the Modi government, which is reintroducing cheetah population in India's wild. This program, which was launched last year, it has brought in at least 20 cheetahs into India from African countries like Namibia and South Africa. Out of these 20 cheetahs, several of them have died recently. Around 3 adults lost their lives in the last couple of months, and just last week, there was a very disturbing development in the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh, where cheetahs have been reintroduced from Africa. 3 out of 4 newborn cubs lost their lives due to natural causes. This caused a lot of alarm amongst ecological experts and conservationists, and it has raised questions over Project Cheetah itself. It has brought up very serious concerns about the strategy and the implementation of Project Cheetah. So to address these concerns, the government has immediately reacted, and the National Tiger Conservation Authority, which is overseeing this program, it has set up a Cheetah Project Steering Committee to guide Project Cheetah under the chairmanship of Dr. Rajesh Gopal. In fact, I had covered this point just a couple of days ago in our daily Hindu analysis. Dr. Rajesh Gopal is a top conservationist from India with considerable experience in conserving and protecting the big cat population. He was closely associated with Project Tiger and its success. He is also the Secretary General of the Global Tiger Forum that plays a key role in tiger conservation in tiger range countries. Is that clear? So under his chairmanship, the Cheetah Project Steering Committee has been set up by the NTCA to look into the discrepancies, the shortcomings, and come out with solutions to ensure that the cheetah population which is being reintroduced is adequately protected in the country. So let's take a slightly detailed look at this topic. Project Cheetah in India had to be launched primarily because cheetahs in India were driven towards extinction. Historically, if you look at the range of cheetahs, if you look at this map over here, you will see that in the Indian subcontinent, there was a very healthy distribution of cheetahs in the wild, be it in central and western and eastern parts of India or in southern parts of India, right? Even in some western parts of India. There was a very healthy distribution of cheetah population, and many of them were eventually driven, the whole species essentially was driven towards extinction, primarily due to hunting and as well as the taming of the cheetahs in India. See, the British especially during colonial period, they considered the cheetahs as a pest. They ordered the extermination of cheetahs by declaring them as vermin population. This led to large-scale killing and hunting of cheetahs and led to drastic population reduction. Even since medieval times, various empires, kingdoms and royal families in India, even though they didn't hunt cheetahs much, they captured cheetahs for their game, for hunting other big animals like, let's say, elephants, tigers, etc. They would capture cheetahs and train them as hunting associates who would help and associate themselves with the hunting and the game practices of the monarchs in India. So various kingdoms and empires have had this practice where they would capture cheetahs on large scale and tame them. Thus, they would lose their wild instincts as well. Their ability to adapt in the natural environment would be compromised as a species because of the large-scale taming that happened for usage in hunting and gaming by the royals in India. Plus the extermination ordered by the colonial rule, right? So all these activities led to the eventual extinction of the Asiatic cheetah. The Asiatic version of the cheetah was driven towards extinction in the subcontinent. Now you find just few Asiatic cheetahs left in Iran. That's the only country where few Asiatic cheetahs can be found. Even there, the numbers are in single digits. So after nearly 7 decades of cheetahs going extinct in India, the Modi government has planned this ambitious program to reintroduce cheetahs in the wild by translocating them from African countries. The African cheetah has a very healthy population in several African range countries like Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe, right? All these countries across southern and eastern Africa, they have a very healthy population of African cheetahs. In fact, they have an overload. In fact, the excess number of cheetahs in Africa is causing a problem because of the shortage of prey, the shortage of habitat and space, right? It's having an effect on other big cats as well. So African countries are more than willing to give away few cheetahs to reduce the population stress on the habitats. So India has struck this deal with Namibia and as well as with South Africa, which makes for one of the world's largest translocation programs. It's one of the most ambitious conservation programs as well, and India's goal is to bring several cheetahs from African countries in the next few years. We'll plan to have at least a population of 35 cheetahs which can have a self-sustaining population in the Kuno National Park of Madhya Pradesh. Few other sites also have been identified in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. So in the next couple of years, you will see the reintroduction of cheetahs in 3 specific areas in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. And India's plan is to have a self-sustaining population of at least 35 cheetahs in the next few years. Of course, in any such ambitious program, there will be setbacks. Not every cheetah will survive the translocation. Plus, cheetahs are naturally vulnerable as well to various factors. So it is natural to lose some of the cheetah population, but the number at which cheetahs are dying out in the last few months has raised very serious concerns. See, in Africa, be it in Namibia or in South Africa, these cheetahs have been bred, they are bred in fenced reserves. Even in Kenya, for example, you would have heard about Masai Mara ranges of Kenya. Even in Tanzania, there are amazing game reserves and ranges. Even in South Africa, then Botswana, Namibia, etc. In most of these countries, these reserves, these biosphere reserves, these national parks, they are not completely open and wild. They are largely fenced and protected reserves where a population is bred with close observation by the authorities. They are not true wild populations. So the cheetahs that we have procured from these African countries, they come from fenced territories. They are not accustomed to competing with other predators, hunting for their own prey or venturing out of their reserves and surviving on their own in the wild. Whereas India, where we are reintroducing them, we are looking for a natural conservation program where we are introducing them into the wild after a certain transition period. After accustomizing them and after going through a quarantine and a slow period of accustomization, they are being directly introduced into the wild where we want the cheetah population to survive in the wild in unfenced reserves, unlike the fenced African reserves. So this in itself could be posing a challenge to the program, according to several experts. The recent cheetahs which have lost their lives, few adults and few cubs, their postmortem was conducted, and the postmortem has shown that the cause is either extreme heat, weakness and malnutrition. Especially with regard to the cubs, the 3 cubs which lost their lives, the primary reason attributed to their death, their untimely death, is natural causes. There is no foul play involved. It's not related with hunting or poaching. No one has poisoned these cheetahs, right? There are no man-made factors here. It is a natural death which has occurred. But the primary factors responsible are extreme heat, that too in the summer season in central India. Temperatures can hit 46, 47 degrees, and the cubs have not survived these high temperatures. Plus, in general, the cubs were extremely weak, underfed, and they were malnourished. And experts are also saying that the mother was inexperienced in tending to her cubs. Since the mother cheetah comes from a fenced reserve, which is used to support from humans and which is used to the support in a breeding program, it is not accustomed to the natural wild environment, and maybe mother's inexperience also played a role in the untimely deaths as the cubs were not adequately nourished. Even the adult cheetahs which have lost their lives, either it could be due to a pathogen which could have infected them, their wounds which they would have picked up, or it could be because of extreme heat and weakness. These are the natural factors which have led to the death of around 7 or 8 cheetahs in the last few months. Now here, even though the government has been facing criticism regarding the overall plan and the way in which it has been implemented, the government has defended itself. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has issued a public statement saying that cheetah cubs have a very high mortality rate in the wild. It's an established fact. You need to note down that cheetah cubs have a very high mortality rate, unlike the big cats like tigers, lions, etc. Most of the cheetah cubs, they die out in the wild. 10% of them survive and make it to adulthood. Almost 80 to 90% of the cubs, they lose out at the initial stages itself. This is a well-established fact with regard to cheetahs. But this being the fact, it becomes all the more important to conserve the cubs and give them the ideal conditions as well when we are reintroducing them into India's wild. So this has led to a standoff between the government and the environmental activists. Several experts and activists are criticizing the government, but the government is defending itself. The government has said, see, so far we have brought 20 cheetahs into India, 8 from Namibia, 12 from South Africa. We are planning few more so that eventually we'll have a self-sustaining population of 35 cheetahs. In this process, few cheetahs are going to die out. You can't help it. Due to natural causes, many of them are going to die out, especially the cubs, because mortality rate amongst cheetah cubs is very high. Due to their competition with other big cats, due to the prevalence of diseases and harsh conditions like high temperature, lack of food, some of them are going to die out. But even if half the population survives, that in itself is an indicator of success of the program. According to the Cheetah Action Plan laid out by the Environment Ministry and NTCA under Project Cheetah, even if 50% of the cheetahs that we get, even if they survive, let's say we get 70 cheetahs in total in the next few years and 35 survives, right? That means the program is a success. That is an indicator of success even if half the population survives in India's wild. Is that clear? But critics and experts are saying that several mistakes are being made in the program. One big mistake is that Kuno National Park has been overburdened with 20 cheetahs. Experts are saying cheetahs are spatial creatures, meaning they want more space. We need to understand their spatial ecology. There are several cheetahs, especially the male adults, which are territorial in nature. They establish their own territory, they mark their territory, and they hold on to their territory. They don't allow other cheetahs or other big predators to enter their territory. They're quite fierce and competitive. But there are floaters as well who move around from one territory to another, who don't hold one territory specifically, especially the female cheetahs, the cubs, and few other runts in the male category. They don't hold on to territory. Usually the alpha cubs, right, they go on to become alpha adults who hold on to territory and they are very competitive. So the point is, cheetahs tend to be territorial, at least half the population. The rest could be floating population. Keeping that in mind, the ideal number of cheetahs to have in a range of 100 square kilometers is 1. Ideally, you should have 1 cheetah per 100 square kilometer. This is a sustainable number according to experts. But in Kuno National Park, since 20 cheetahs have been introduced, the density has gone up to 3 cheetahs per 100 square kilometers. So this shows the lack of planning and oversight on the part of the government and the conservation authorities. Experts are saying that ideally you should have just 1 cheetah in a 100 square kilometer range to ensure that the territorial and floater cheetahs don't encounter each other. They don't fight with each other and they have enough prey base, enough habitat for themselves. But in case of Kuno National Park, where in only one national park all the cheetahs have been dumped, the density has gone up to 3 cheetahs per 100 square kilometer. And this is not a healthy number. It is bound to lead to competition. It is bound to increase the stress in the population, leading to their eventual death. Experts are also saying that since they need larger field of play and they are coarser animals, meaning they keep moving, they course the whole area, the habitat, they don't stay in one place. It's important to shift some of them into other habitats in Rajasthan and in Madhya Pradesh. 2 more reserves have been identified in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Ideally, they're saying that the government should have distributed the cheetahs between the 3 reserves instead of packing every cheetah that we got into Kuno National Park. So that is one criticism which has come in. And they're also saying that African fenced cheetahs, which are largely bred in these fenced areas, they may not be able to adapt to India's wild. They may struggle to adapt to the wild reserves in India, as they have to compete with tigers and leopards. They will have to survive with a limited prey base, and also considering our population, human population, man-animal conflict chances are also very high. That's why the experts are concerned about the way in which the plan is being implemented, but the government is saying that this is the right approach. Even if half the population survives, it is enough. Cheetahs have a high mortality rate, and also more importantly, we have seen success in similar programs in conserving our tiger, lion and leopard population. India has a culture, a tradition of conserving and protecting the big cats by allowing them to thrive in the wild itself. We don't usually have fenced reserves like African reserves. In India, in wild reserves and in wild protected areas itself, we have managed to successfully conserve and protect the other big cats like leopards, tigers and lions. So the government and other experts are arguing that we have enough scientific basis to continue with the current approach. The losses are expected and they say that the program is justified. But the critics are arguing that spatial ecology has not been studied. The spatial needs of the cheetahs are not being taken care of. And dumping of cheetahs in just one reserve is putting the stress on the animals and eventually resulting in their untimely death, right? So that is the counterpoint. So let's see, only time will tell whether the program will succeed, and we need to wait and watch for that, all right? But for now, this is more than enough. The advantages of Project Cheetah, why the government launched the program, right? And the challenges, the hurdles being faced in its implementation. If you're aware of this, you can answer any prelims or mains question. Now just take a small exercise from my side. Identify the IUCN status of cheetahs and post that in the comment section below. All right. Now let's move to the next article from Science and Technology. It's from page 13 and it deals with the topic of AI, artificial intelligence. This article is specifically focused on the usage of facial recognition technology by the Department of Telecommunications to tackle the procurement of SIM cards by using false identities. See, of late, we have seen a huge surge in financial frauds and cyber scams being committed by using various SIMs that have been procured with fake identity proofs. I'll give you an example. Using one photo, at least 500 different SIMs have been procured by various fraudsters and criminals by just manipulating the other KYC data. This is a recent scandal which has been unearthed by the police and security agencies, and they're working with the Department of Telecom to curb this practice. There was a recent incident where it appeared that they've used one person's photograph in 500 different applications across service providers. They have got around 500 SIMs just by changing the name of the person, the age, the address, etc. The other KYC data, the other KYC parameters have been changed, but the photo is of the same person. 500 SIMs have been issued. These are fraudulently procured SIM cards. They are being used by criminals and fraudsters to commit cyber scams and financial scams, and they are looting people. To curb this menace, the Department of Telecommunication is stepping in with an AI tool known as ASTR. It's a facial recognition tool powered by artificial intelligence. It stands for Artificial Intelligence and Facial Recognition Powered Solution for Telecom SIM Subscriber Verification. So a dedicated facial recognition AI tool is being deployed by the Telecom Ministry to tackle the fraudulent SIMs that are being procured by strengthening the KYC process. That is the Know Your Customer process, where the background verification is done to check whether it is the right person who's residing in the right location who's procuring this SIM card. Alright, so AI-based facial recognition technology is being used here. It has already been rolled out in many states across the country where these scams have been reported. Many such cases have come up where by using fake ID cards, fake data and fake pictures, a lot of fraudulent SIM cards have been procured, which eventually are being channeled towards cyber crimes and financial frauds. Alright, so to deal with these emerging criminal activities, the Department of Telecom is leveraging AI technology as it can pick up similar facial characteristics and it can easily provide a quick match in the database, thus helping prevent such frauds from being committed. Now, before new SIM cards are issued, the picture of a person can be run up against the database by using facial recognition softwares. They are driven by AI algorithms, that is machine learning algorithms. If they come up with a match, and if there is a misuse of the picture, right, immediately those applications can be flagged, the SIM cards can be denied, and those who are pursuing such activities can be targeted as well by the police and security agencies. So that is the whole intention behind it. But now, this program has raised few concerns as well. Even though it is essential to tackle the threat, the usage of facial recognition technology powered by AI raises a whole set of concerns. It raises many legal and as well as ethical concerns. Because see, AI technology in itself is largely under-tested on a large population. It is known that AI algorithms are fed with data. These machine learning algorithms, they are learning from all the data which is being fed to them. Right? Data sets, data samples on a very large scale is fed to them. That is how these algorithms pick up key information and variables and learn from that. Now, if the data being fed to them is biased, their eventual results and outcomes will also reflect those biases. See, we already have a number of social biases. For example, in US, it has been noticed that AI algorithms, facial recognition AI algorithms, they are false identifying or misidentifying the black population in the country considering the racial bias in the US, which has fed into the AI systems and algorithms as well. Even immigrants, religious minorities are facing a higher risk of false identification in the US, also in European countries, where similar facial recognition tools are deployed on a large scale for security reasons. Is that clear? Several studies have established this, that facial recognition softwares driven by AI, they are fed with false data and biased data from the real world. Considering the human biases that exist on racial lines, religious lines, and nationalistic lines, these biases get fed into the data as well, and the algorithm learns that it develops a stereotype against minorities, against blacks, against immigrants and people of religious minorities. So when it identifies people, there is a number of false negatives and false positives coming up, leading to large-scale misidentification, right? So this is very inaccurate. The technology in itself, even though it is quite accurate and reliable, the inaccuracy pops in. There are many cases where misidentification will happen. Using facial recognition for security purposes is a different game altogether. See, facial recognition for access control is different. For example, let's say to enter a building, to enter your office, right? Maybe facial recognition tools are used. In air travel, today facial recognition is being used to simplify air travel. So there it is fine when it comes to access control. Even when it comes to any other generic purposes, right? Facial recognition has a number of applications. For example, the facial recognition tools on your phone, right? The editing apps that you have, your regular camera, right? It comes backed with facial recognition tools, and the softwares on your phone help you in various applications of facial recognition. But when it is mainly used for security reasons, such as these, if even there is a single case of misidentification, that error rate, that inaccuracy rate can be very costly for the country, for the society. This could lead to a violation of democratic rights, fundamental rights. It could raise questions on right to privacy, mass surveillance by the state, and the breach of your consent. Whether the data was procured through your consent, right? Right to consent is seen as integral to data protection and data security. Right to privacy today is a fundamental right in India under Article 21, as declared by the Supreme Court in the K.S. Puttaswamy case, right? So it always gives rise to fear that governments might misuse facial recognition tools through their intelligence agencies, through their security agencies, to conduct mass surveillance. So these fears naturally come up, raising legal and ethical problems. In India especially, we don't even have a data protection law in place. The Personal Data Protection Bill, which had been tabled in 2019, was withdrawn last year due to strong opposition in the parliament. Now the government is drafting a new bill and it is yet to be introduced in the parliament. So there is no data protection law in our country. We don't even have a specific policy with regard to facial recognition. So in this legal vacuum, if such tools are already being deployed by government agencies, the concern regarding breach of privacy, concerns regarding mass surveillance and wrong identification definitely goes up and increases. The question is, who will be held accountable for misidentification, right? If injustice is done to people based on such wrong identification, who will be held accountable for this? If this eventually leads to privacy issues and mass surveillance, which is a breach of your fundamental rights, how will the government be held accountable for that? When you don't even have a legal framework and a policy in place, right? This is where a NITI Aayog report is very important. The NITI Aayog has identified India's national strategy towards harnessing the potential of AI reasonably. It has come out with a paper document which talks about employing AI technology within the reasonable norms of our constitutional morality and public interest. AI can definitely change the economy, it can change the way we operate and work, but definitely it raises many concerns and questions as well, including constitutional and legal questions. So NITI Aayog it's pushing to strike a balance here. It is encouraging the deployment of AI tools with the right policy and law in place, but while protecting the constitutional and fundamental rights. NITI Aayog has said any data captured for AI verification through facial recognition should follow the norms of consent. Due consent has to be obtained. This should be voluntary and should never be made mandatory. But now, with the approach Department of Telecom has taken, it will become mandatory to run your pictures through facial recognition if you're applying for new SIM cards. Alright, so making it mandatory has very dangerous consequences. That is when the technology could be misused potentially for mass surveillance. That is where a lot of misidentification can happen. So that's why NITI Aayog has insisted that the deployment of AI tools should be limited. We should do it in such a way that we fulfill public interest while balancing it with fundamental rights and constitutional morality. So the need of the hour is we need a law, we need a data protection law before such tools and technologies are rolled out. We need specific policies and regulations in place for regulating facial recognition tools. We also need a AI regulatory framework, maybe a dedicated law for regulating AI technologies. Right? So that is the need of the hour. And in India, we have this legal vacuum. Is that clear? So these are the concerns that you should be aware of as far as usage of facial recognition is concerned. Now this completes my discussion on all the big topics, and we move on to the smaller topics related to prelims. On page number 1 and 14, we have a couple of articles related to the new parliament that Prime Minister Modi has inaugurated today. Right? It's a landmark development, and it brings up a topic which we covered in a previous class, that is the Sengol. The Sengol which has been installed in the new parliament and which has attracted a lot of media attention in the last few days. The new parliament building, which you see here in the image, follows this triangular structure which was initially proposed by British architect Herbert Baker when the old parliament was designed in 1920s. See, you can see the old parliament building here, which has a circular shape over here, right? It was inaugurated back in 1927. That's when it was opened. So when it was built in 1920s in Lutyens, Delhi, British architect Herbert Baker, he had proposed a triangular structure actually. But this was later redesigned for a circular structure, which is widely believed to be modeled on the Yogini temple at Morena. All right. So the new parliament complex, which has come up as part of the Vista Development Initiative, the Central Vista Development Initiative, the new design follows the same triangular structure that was proposed by the British architect Herbert Baker. And another important point here to note is that red sandstone has been widely used in the new parliament building as well. The old parliament was also built primarily with red sandstone, which is widely available near Delhi. And the new building also makes use of red sandstone. That's another architectural feature. Many experts are hailing the new parliament as an architectural wonder. It's a 4-storied complex with large seating capacity both in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha to accommodate even future expansion of India's Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Compared to the old parliament, the seating capacity is almost 3 times higher. All right. In the new parliament, Lok Sabha alone can seat around 888 members, which can be further expanded to 1,272 seats for a joint sitting. Rajya Sabha has an increased seating capacity of 384. So this seating capacity is nearly 3 times the seating capacity of the old parliament. It also comes with all modern amenities, enough offices for all the MPs, the ministers, etc. And it is in line with the spirit and ethos of Indian culture, Indian tradition, and as well as the Indian constitution. Right? So in this regard, the government has recently brought up one issue, that is the Sengol sceptre, which is linked with Tamil Nadu's history and India's independence. When Prime Minister Nehru was handed over power from the British during transition of power, apparently a Sengol, which is a sceptre of Tamil origin, which has roots in Tamil history, was handed over to Prime Minister Nehru to symbolize the transfer of power from British India to a new independent India. This part of history was largely lost in our history books, but now the government is trying to bring this up, and the Sengol, which you can see here, which is this sceptre or a staff. It's a 5-foot staff. It's like a stick, which is ornated with gold and silver carvings, and on the top sits a Nandi idol, a bull deity, which is sacred in Hinduism. This sceptre was part of Chola tradition. The Cholas and even the Cheras, right? They used to have this tradition where they would transfer the sceptre from one king to another. When there was a transfer of power, the transfer of power was symbolized by the transfer of sceptre. So when India gained independence, a group of mutts or monasteries in Tamil Nadu, right, under the leadership of the high priests, the Adinams, they came up with the sceptre they revived the Chola tradition of the Sengol. They got a new Sengol designed by a Tamil Nadu-based jeweler, and they brought it to Delhi to hand it over to Nehru, which symbolized the transfer of power from British India to Prime Minister Nehru, or to independent India. So this scepter is now being installed in the new parliament in the Lok Sabha, and it has raised a lot of controversy as well. Because see, handing over scepters is a monarchy tradition, a tradition associated with kings, monarchies, etc. For example, recently the British monarch was coronated, right? The British king. There, the high priest handed over a similar scepter to the king, to the British monarch. These are monarchical practices. They have no place in a constitutional democracy. So many critics are questioning the reasoning and the rationale behind this. In a constitutional democracy like India, these monarchy practices don't have any value. Yes, it has a lot of historical value, no doubt. There's a lot of cultural value behind it, definitely. But giving it a symbolic place in the new parliament has raised political controversy because India is not a monarchy. India is a constitutional democracy, and such practices have no place in a constitutional democracy. That is the argument of the critics. But the government is justifying it, saying that it highlights Indian tradition, Indian culture, it's reviving India's rich cultural heritage, and it symbolizes the transfer of power, the peaceful transfer of power that used to happen in the Cholas and the Chera kingdoms. All right, so that is some basic details that you need to know about this important development. Next, from page number 4, we have an article related to the Gongadi Shawls of Telangana. According to me, it's a very important topic for your prelims. You can expect a question here. The Gongadi Shawls, also called the Kambal, it is mainly produced in Telangana region. It is a blanket, a woolen blanket, which is made by the indigenous nomadic pastoral communities of the Deccan region. All right, in the Deccan region, in the interior parts of Telangana, you have a Deccani sheep, which is endemic and indigenous to the region, called the Nalla Gorre. The wool of the sheep is used to make a blanket called Kambal or Gongadi. This blanket is very popular in the region. It's known to provide a lot of warmth. It has a lot of shelf life. It can last a good 10-15 years without damage. And it is integral to the culture of the indigenous nomadic pastoral communities of Telangana. This gained a lot of prominence as well, as it was used by the Indian Armed Forces as well during harsh winters. It's known to provide a lot of warmth to people who wear these blankets. All right, so that is the Gongadi Shawls. It's of Telangana. It's produced through the wool of the Nalla Gorre, which is from the Deccan region. All right, the pastoralist communities, the nomadic pastoralist communities, they are the ones who produce this indigenous blanket using the wool from the sheep. So that is some basic details that you need to note down with regard to Gongadi Shawls. Next, we'll talk about the Governing Council of NITI Aayog. The Government of India and the NITI Aayog had convened a meeting of the Governing Council, which is headed by the Prime Minister. But several chief ministers boycotted this meeting. They didn't even attend. And this has attracted criticism from the ruling party. The ruling party has said it is irresponsible of CMs from opposition-ruled states not to attend this meeting, this vital meeting of national development and national importance. But the other parties are defending themselves, saying that the central government is not giving enough space for the states. It's not respecting federalism. It's breaking center-state relations. So why should we attend these meetings? So several states and chief ministers, they have boycotted the meet, leading to this controversy. And that is why you need to know what is the Governing Council of NITI Aayog. The Governing Council is seen as one of the highest decision-making bodies in the country. It brings together the Prime Minister of the country, along with all the chief ministers of states and union territories and the administrators of union territories such as lieutenant governors, along with ex officio members, the vice chairman of NITI Aayog, and all the members and invitees of NITI Aayog. It is somewhat similar to the National Development Council that existed before when we had the Planning Commission. Under the erstwhile Planning Commission, we had the NDC, the National Development Council, which had a similar composition. It would bring the Prime Minister along with all the CMs and administrators of union territories together, and it would also have representation from the Planning Commission. All the members of Planning Commission would be represented. This was the highest level policy making, decision making body looking after key developmental issues. So now, after NITI Aayog replaced Planning Commission, under NITI Aayog, the governing council has been formed, which has this composition, which meets regularly to discuss national priorities and strategies as far as the country's development is concerned. It lays down the development agenda of the country, identifies the key sectors of focus for the government, for both central and state governments. It also acts as a platform for building center-state cooperation and for developing a shared vision at the national and state level, which is in line with the spirit of cooperative federalism. All right? So that is why the governing council of NITI Aayog is very important. All right? It includes the Prime Minister, headed by the PM, including all chief ministers of states and UTs, administrators of all the other UTs, the lieutenant governors, all the members of NITI Aayog, including the vice chairman and special invitees. All right? So please note down the composition of the governing council. It's very important. Also note the role of the governing council. Next, on page number 11, we have this article from International Relations. It's related to Iraq. Iraq has launched an ambitious connectivity project known as the Route of Development. The Iraqi government has unveiled this $17 billion connectivity project that links West Asia with Europe. All right? See, let me show you what this project is all about. The Route of Development project. It is essentially linking the Persian Gulf, the strategic Persian Gulf over here. See, this is where Iraq has a very important port, the Alpha port, facing the Persian Gulf. In fact, Iraq is the top oil supplier to India, so it's very important. All the oil we import from Iraq comes from this strategic port, the Alpha port. It passes through the Persian Gulf, the Hormuz Strait, and then enters the Arabian Sea. So from this strategic port, Iraq is developing a series of road, rail, and canal projects that will link all the key cities in the country, like Basra, Baghdad, Mosul, and others. And it will connect with the neighboring countries of Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, and more importantly, it will link with Turkey, which is a true Eurasian power. From here, the route will link with Europe. This trade route is being referred to as a Silk Route. It is reviving the ancient Silk Route that passed through West Asia, that connected Europe with the rest of Asia. So the Route of Development project, which spans around 1,200 kilometers, connecting Persian Gulf with Turkey and further with Europe, is seen as an ambitious connectivity link that can boost trade and connectivity in this vital part of West Asia region. So that is what you need to know about this project. Finally, the last article, Ukrainian drones have reportedly attacked a critical Russian oil pipeline in Europe called the Druzhba Oil Pipeline. The Druzhba project is a key Russian pipeline project. It's one of the world's largest oil pipelines that brings Russian oil and gas to several European countries. In this map here, you can see the alignment of the Druzhba oil pipeline. It supplies Russian oil and gas to various East European countries, including Belarus and Ukraine, all across Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Austria, Germany, covering Central and even Western Europe. All these countries, from Eastern to Central to Western Europe, are covered through the Druzhba oil pipeline, and reportedly, Ukrainian forces have launched drone strikes to attack the pipeline and destroy the critical infrastructure. This is Russia's allegation. Ukraine has denied it. Ukraine has not acknowledged this operation. All right. But the fact that the Druzhba pipeline was attacked in itself is important, and you should know where exactly is the Druzhba oil pipeline located. It's bringing oil gas from Russia to these European countries in Eastern Central Europe, also to Western Europe. All right. So that is the last point in today's discussion. And with this, let's close the Hindu analysis for today. I hope it was a good, fruitful session. Do let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, take a look at the mains practice questions. It's based on what we have covered at the start of the session. I've had a detailed discussion on these two topics. So I expect you to write these answers to these questions and post them in the answer writing portal. The link has been given in the description below. Also, let us know how it went, and if some of you who are watching it after the prelims, if you guys have attempted the prelims, do let us know how many questions you attempted and what score are you expecting. And as I told you at the start, don't forget, today at 7 p.m, please come back to our YouTube channel, because we are going to discuss the entire question paper, GS paper 1. We are going to discuss all the 100 questions with the answers. The answer keys will be given to you. So do join the session live and get to know all the key answers. So that is it from my side today. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.